course, in the past couple of days, weeks even, the conversation about media freedom and the word you heard also often, the draconian media law, has been in the headlines for quite a number of days now. And of course, because of those changes that had been made to the law that threatened to reverse gains that have been made over the years. And yesterday we saw media practitioners out in the streets, peaceful demonstrations, saying to no, Mr. President, as much as he did not assent to the bill, that memorandum he had sent back to Parliament with the recommendations, the media practitioners argued was not in any way what they had preferred or what they had sought in their deliberations. And today, in studio, unfortunately, we understand Jamle Kamau will not be able to make it. He has been summoned to State House, of course, on ongoing discussions on the same. But we'll be joined by Harun Mwangi in a short while. He'll be seated with us here in studio, CEO, the Media Council of Kenya. But with me right now is David Ohito, who's Deputy Chair, the Editors Guild, and one of the voices and people you have been seeing. And as far as this conversation is concerned, you know, I was telling somebody, when he was speaking very passionately, but of course in very important issues. And after the protest yesterday, the conversation shifted a bit in as far as us hearing there's a deal. But let's start with what really was the issue at the very beginning, for those who have continually not understood, because the first time Jamlek, I remember, came for an interview here, he said there was nothing wrong with the law as it was, when, you know, there was all this, the president being asked not to assent to the bill. He was categorical. It is constitutional. There's nothing wrong with it. But then later on we had, in fact, it had issues in terms of its being within the confines of law, and it was sent back. Take us through that journey we have walked so far.
Thank you very much. First of all, let me thank journalists countrywide who turned up to stand with freedom of the media space. We could have never done it in a better way. We sent our message very strongly to the authorities, to Parliament, to the executive, and to the whole world that we desire a free and independent media as per Article 34 of the Constitution of this Republic.
Yeah.
Well, there are two bills, and there seems to be confusion over which one is the media bill and which one affects the operations of media. There are two bills that affect the environment in which media operates. The first one is the Kenya Information and Communication Amendment Bill 2013.
This is the
KICA bill, which has already been passed by Parliament, sent to President for assent, but declined assent by President Uhuru and sent back to the House for amendments.
Yeah.
Then there's the second bill, which is the Media Council of Kenya Bill 2013.
Right.
The two bills have huge impact on how media operates, and there needs to be clarity on the two. The first one, KICA bill, had very, very serious challenges, which we flagged out from the outset that we are not going to accept this because they were greatly going to infringe on the freedom of media houses and freedom and independence of journalists to carry out their watchdog role, to report on corruption, and to do their stories freely without state interference, as spelled out clearly in the Constitution of Kenya. At the moment, we are at that point we call the defining state of the future of media in Kenya. And which is why our message, even throughout the protest yesterday, is that every member of Parliament must come and stand with the media and say we can have better laws, taking this country forward, entrenching democracy, and restoring independence and freedom of the media as per the Constitution. The challenges which were with the KICA bill included unconstitutionality on grounds that while the Constitution denies the state direct control of media houses, there was going to be a very strong hand of the cabinet secretary in appointments on these media bodies. There was going to be very strong powers being wielded by the cabinet secretary, that he could decide that this journalist does not meet the standard and he could send him home or deregister him. It had flaws that a journalist could be fined 1 million shillings for even unspecified offenses just because of reporting on a story or publishing a story. So these were some of the grave concerns we saw. But even if you look at the wider penalties which were being spelled out to target media houses at 20 million shillings, very few media houses, including the big media houses like the Standard Group, Nation, Royal Media, Radio Africa, Capital Group, it's a lot of money. And going by the number of suits we receive or demand letters media houses receive every year, I mean, very few media houses would operate. If you look at the contribution of the smaller radio stations, we have about 116 of them. And they some operate on budgets of 5 million, 10 million in a year. If you slap such a station with a 20 million shilling fine, what are you saying? It's gone. So we were going to lose over 100 radio stations, and we were going to lose about 4,000 journalists in this country, which is why we are saying we must stand up and defend the space of media in this country.
So the biggest concern there was the involvement of the government. I mean, by virtue of having the cabinet secretary having that power to be able to select the people who are, in essence, exercising power over disciplinary issues and appointment of who decides on this. But it was after that was passed by Parliament. Of course, very many of the media fraternity came out very strongly, and also the civil society, NGOs and all, came out very strongly urging the president not to assent. And in fact, he did not assent. But in the memorandum, he returned to Parliament with recommendations. It was interesting, actually. Immediately after that, when he, finally did not assent and send the recommendations, there was a welcoming note from even the media. We saw quite a number of people saying, yes, was there a misunderstanding? Then later on, then we go so bashing of saying, no, it's even worse. What happened at that time? Was there a lack of understanding of what exactly the implications of what recommendations the president had made were?
No, the original feeling was that if president denies assent to that draconian law, he would then make proposals that would improve the law, make it better and acceptable. I was the first person to welcome the move to deny assent, but we had not seen the contents of the memorandum, which State House decided to send very late in the night. But upon perusal of these clauses the president sent back, we say the president has appreciated there were gaps and flaws with that law. There were clauses which were unconstitutional, but he did not offer curative solutions to this law, and which is why we went up on the ante saying, no, Mr. President, I think you've erred. And we went further to remind the president that, look, you have acknowledged there are problems. You've tried to, remove some of the unconstitutional clauses. But we were complaining that the cabinet secretary would have immense powers. But now, alongside the cabinet secretary, you've added yourself to be having direct powers to control the media. And we're saying...
So how did he do that? What did his recommendation say? What was he adding onto that? What was he...
That he would directly, or the cabinet secretary, appoint members of the select panel. And then we were saying, no, what does the state want to do in terms of controlling the media? What is their interest in trying to decide how media will operate? And we were saying no. But his memorandum itself was full of contradictions. At one hand, the president says that all matters ethical and professional which deal with journalists shall be dealt with under Media Council Bill. But the same president goes ahead to propose that now he has reduced the fine for journalists from 1 million shillings to 500,000. And they will be tried by what I've called a kangaroo tribunal. And we're saying no. All over the world, professions have a way of dealing with professional challenges, ethical challenges that befall them in the practice of their work. Doctors have theirs, lawyers do, engineers do. But now the president wants the journalist, who is a professional, to be tried by this kangaroo tribunal. And we're saying, no, we are not going to accept that. There are best practices, how it is done all over the world. In any case, Kenya has had that chance and opportunity of dealing with professional breaches and ethical standards under the Media Council in the Complaints Commission. And we're saying, why are you running away from what the practice has been? Why is this an attempt to target the journalists now and target media houses also? And those are some of the clauses that we are trying to thresh out when we had these consensus building moments with the Communication Committee of Parliament.
Okay, so you've been having that, just trying to iron out the issues and see if you can reach an agreement consensus. But initially, as I mentioned, Jamle Kamau, the chair of this committee, had maintained and held from the very beginning, from the onset, that there's nothing wrong with the law. So at what point did he and the committee see the ground? What were these negotiations like? What were the discussions you were having?
I think one of the challenges is that maybe at Parliament level we didn't have very strong legal advisors to guide the committee.
Okay.
And that is why we were seeing those constitutional gaps. But we are wondering that this bill was generated by the government. The Attorney General had input, and we are wondering what happened along the way. So it appears either there were some internal inherent challenges in the drafting process and a lot of confusion, and that must have led to this problem. But when we flagged out the challenges, now they started seeing sense, and there has been a lot of consensus built in a short time. The challenge, however, is that this very limited time. These laws have to be passed and enacted by 6th December. So initially, when yesterday members of Parliament...
Why by 6th December?
That is a constitutional requirement.
Deadline, okay. Yeah. Even after there's been this kind of back and forth, passed, gone, no sent back, but 6th is the deadline.
6th is the deadline.
Yeah.
But beyond that even, it's the technicality that we have before the floor of the House.
Okay.
That now, the debates which will happen today afternoon will require no less than 233 MPs to change anything on the presidential memorandum. Those are standing orders of the House and also constitutional requirements, which is why we are extending this appeal that any MP watching Morning Express must dash and be able to attend that session and show solidarity with Kenyans, show solidarity with media. This bill is not about media itself. It's about Kenyans, it's about freedom of expression, it's about inalienable right to say and express your opinion. So it's should not be narrowed down to be seen as media being gagged. Actually, it's Kenyans being gagged.
Sure. And it's interesting because you're talking about that 2/3 majority requirement, and I'm seeing our other guest is here. He could just join us, Harun Mwangi, already in studio. It's interesting that you're saying that 2/3 is required. So if today in Parliament there's not that kind of threshold achieved and attained, and then the proposals, the changes, recommendations from the president remain as that is what will carry the day?
We negotiated a post-challenge document, and we have agreed with MPs that in the unlikely event that they endorse the President memorandum, or they fail to raise the threshold of 233 members to overturn this decision, how do we move forward? Parliament is going on recess on 5th, but we have looked at possible ways and negotiated with Jamle Kamau and members of the committee, and they've showed commitment. We have signed an agreement that within 3 months, all those offensive clauses which we have been challenging will be renegotiated, and we will be very pleased when the Speaker of the National Assembly reconvenes Parliament to address these challenges. So for now, we're saying there's ceasefire, there has been very good ground recovered, and there's a glimmer of hope. We hope the white smoke will favor freedom of media in this country.
All right, and as I mentioned, Harun Mwangi, who's the Chief Executive Officer of the Media Council of Kenya, been part of these discussions that have been going on, one of the champions as well alongside that organization of that fight for media freedom, joining us now on set. Thank you very much, sir. We appreciate you making time to be part of this discussion this morning. So we're hearing there's some form of ceasefire, but also still clarity being sought, and in terms of understanding from here on going forward, forward. According to what David is saying, that there is needed that threshold to overturn what the president has said or he's recommended. But if that threshold is not attained, what the president recommended carries the day. But that there's room after that to still go back and change things to work in favor of the media?
Yeah, I think the whole issue is that the dialogue is very important.
Okay.
And when there's mutual agreement in terms of the way forward for media in our country, I think it is possible to look for a solution,
yes,
even after today's debate. And therefore, I would express my hope that we go through it successfully today, because we have done a significant appeal to all members of parliament that they come out and discuss and vote for this motion.
Okay.
So, but if it doesn't work, then there's still some hope that we can negotiate and agree to move forward together as a nation.
Okay. Yeah. And how will that unfold? How will that happen, those negotiations, after it has formally been passed into law? How does that unfold for Kenyans to understand?
That the members of parliament understand the pertinent issues that we raised. The issues that have to do with the protection of media freedom.
Yes.
And when there is an agreement from the members of parliament, it means that there is a hope of addressing the issue even after today.
Okay.
And as Mr. Ohito has just put it, that after 3 months, after the convening of the parliament, then we could look at the issues again.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We're just talking with him about the discussions and deliberations that we've been seeing taking place between you and the committee. And as I put to him also at the beginning with Sin Jamlek and the committee, very categorical about their thoughts in as far as maintaining that this was constitutional as it was from the beginning. So what are some of these things you're able to negotiate that made them cede this ground and say, okay, we see where you're coming from. We now agree. We see where we were wrong. What is it they'd misunderstood before? What is it they were fighting for that they now see, okay, we were wrong?
I think I would say that they never took the industry seriously.
Okay.
Or they rather took the views of some section of the industry and not the entire industry. And they realized that the issues that they never took seriously from some sections were more serious and more pertinent. And that the constituent that now is expressing the views is a constituent that stands for public interest. And that's the realization that of course has dawned. But the most fundamental issue for us as media is the protection of public interest and media freedom. And the concern that the journalists who are going to find a hefty amount of money, 500,000, 1 million shillings, but of course reduced 500,000 shillings,
yes,
and 220 million shillings for media houses.
Yeah.
And the fact that the media houses were going to be treated together with other infrastructural services for the industry, telecoms, postal services, courier services, and wondering now, where is the philosophy and principles of self-regulation? So why don't you separate the work of infrastructure regulation from the work of regulating the media, the code of conduct? And so that separation now and retention of all issues to do with the media and ethics in the Complaints Commission of Kenya, in the Complaints Commission of the Media Council, and the issues of multimedia, handling the issues of infrastructure.
Yes.
That separation for us was a plus.
Okay.
And the fact that now the fines that are likely to go to a journalist in case of the code of conduct are just 100,000.
Okay.
And for the media house is 500,000 shillings.
500,000.
But of course now there are other challenges. If, for example, a media house jammed frequency for another media house, then of course they face multimedia tribunal. So basically we are saying then that we have a very clear separation, and the independence of the Communication Authority of Kenya, the independence of the Media Council of Kenya, the independence of the tribunal, those were aspects, because they are going to deal with very sensitive issues. If they are not independent of parliament, yes, and independent of the government, of the state, then we're going to have a problem.
Okay.
So independence was key. separation of issues in terms of ethics and broadcasting code and other issues, again, for us was a plus, and we're very happy about that.
David, and let me bring you in also on the fact this conversation is happening, and there's been so much discussion on separation, not only on the media case, on other issues, judiciary and all, separation of powers. And in going back to the media, we've seen what has happened in Uganda in terms of clampdown on the media, in Tanzania. I mean, what does this say that we're having this conversation, the diminishing democratic space, as some have argued, in as far as what we're hearing, proposals for NGOs and the kind of funding that comes in? What does this say to you for where Kenya, as we mark 50 years, is heading?
I think that's more of a political question than a media question, but what we are seeing,
is part of that.
Yes,
very much
what we are seeing is
of it,
calculated and targeted move to roll back gains of democracy in this country. We are going back as far much as 40 years. If you look at the Statute Law Amendment Bill, the so-called Omnibus Law, there are very dangerous clauses which have been sneaked in, including that Kenyans will no longer be accessing bail after you are charged with an offense bordering on security issues. So in short, you will have more people in remand and prisons spending time because the magistrate or the prosecutor simply said you cannot get bail. Two, if you look at the funding cap for public benefits organizations like NGOs at 15%, we all know what the NGOs do in this country.
Yes.
We all know, including Parliament, which is expected to support, to pass laws. Most of their committee work is funded by NGOs. So I'm saying, who is this who is so blind, who is not seeing the future of this country, who wants to kill that beautiful role that the NGOs have been playing, who wants to deny Kenyans who have been getting ARVs and other drugs and services through the support of NGOs. So I think that the few people are still suffering from what I call hangovers of the dark days, who are getting appointments in government, who are sitting behind in the drafting of these draconian laws which want to whittle down freedom. And I think they are simply asking Kenyans that prepare for more street protests. And we showed the way yesterday. If that is what they want, have no problem.
And Mwangi, what for you does this say? I mean, the fact that we're having all these conversations and the thread that seems to connect all of this is that space, is that freedom, which we've been celebrating for a very long time. But some argue that perhaps this president feels that the former president had given a bit too much space, and maybe that space needs to be, measured a little bit, and people not to just feel they can run all over the place.
Well, I think leadership is a very interesting subject, and accountability as well, because they have to go together. And possibly the president and the government is trying to flex their muscles in terms of putting things in order in terms of leadership. However, there is also a trend, as Mr. Ohito has just said, where laws have been made without very serious interrogation of the circumstances and situation. And if the media bill is a reflection of what is happening in terms of enactment of laws, then I would think it is very unfortunate, because for media we are more active, and therefore now this space must be protected. What about other bills really that have no specific constituents that can come out and say this issue is not good? What is happening? For us, that for me is a big concern, because we exactly don't know. Like the laws, the miscellaneous amendment that Ohito is mentioning, is something that has very serious provisions, and it is not small. It's not just minor amendments, but they're very substantive amendments. But nobody is raising those very serious issues. And I'm wondering, the leaders that know about these issues, why are they not raising them? So for me, I think there is lack of patriotism as well in terms of driving this country to where it should be for the welfare of the people. And that is a very big concern for leaders that we have today in our country.
All right, our time is winding down. We must bring this to a close. But for the kicker bill, from what I'm gathering from this discussion, of course, we're watching today what's going to happen in Parliament. After that, you both say if it in case is upheld, what the recommendations were. There's still room for negotiations after that. But what about the media bill, the media council? Where are we with that one?
I think the media council bill, we have agreed on pertinent issues, and both the independent in terms of appointment, in terms of security of the members of the council, in terms of security of the complaints commission, in terms of funding, in terms of independent between the council and the complaints commission, so that the council can raise issues proactively, at the complaints commission. So, and the whole issue of the code of conduct being maintained at the complaints commission, and of course moderate fine really for issues of the breach of the code of conduct. So for us, those are very fundamental issues that already have been protected, and we don't need the two-third majority in our bill.
Okay.
This is a final reading. We only need a simple majority, and within the confine of our agreement, and then we move ahead.
So that would be an easy sell.
That would be an easy sell.
Okay, excellent. Finally, David, 50 years, that's what Kenya is marking this year. The media, we've seen a strike, a demonstration. The people who usually will be behind the cameras in front, and really to fight for that freedom that has come a long way in that space. What, for you going forward, do you see in coming years in as far as practice in this industry is concerned?
I must say, as I started, that this is the defining moment for media in this country, the future of media, or anybody training to be a journalist in the near future. But it's a question of legacy. If the 11th Parliament wants to go into the annals of history as having defended the freedom of expression of all Kenyans, freedom and independence of media, this is the day they must all turn up and side with the media. History will be written. We are already writing it, and we will be able to single out and profile individuals who stood in favor of freedom of expression and independence of media in this country. There's no other chance. Very defining. If your MP is not in Parliament today, ask him or her, what happened? Where were you? Why did you want to kill freedom of expression in Kenya?
At that crucial hour, which is today in a few hours' time. You said how many MPs are required in
233 members of the National Assembly.
So they better text each other and get everybody out there today in Parliament. David Ohito, Deputy Chair, Editors Guild, and Harun Mwangi, who's the CEO of the Media Council of Kenya, talking to us through this deal that was reached yesterday. And of course, we'll be watching very closely and keenly in happenings in the National Assembly later on this afternoon to see how that story develops. But they say even if the recommendations and the bill as having been passed before is not overturned, there is still room for reprieve in coming days. Things should still be ironed out, so perhaps we can breathe a sigh of relief. But of course, our story will continue to cover very closely for